Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows but Jesus. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Glory, hallelujah. Sometimes I'm up, sometimes I'm down. Oh, yes, Lord. Sometimes I'm almost to the ground. Oh, yes, Lord. Oh, nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows but Jesus. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Glory, hallelujah. If you get there before I do, oh yes, Lord, tell all my friends I'm coming too. Oh yes, Lord. Oh, nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows but Jesus. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Glory, hallelujah.
Welcome to the 5th week of our journey through New Jersey, highlighting places and people associated with the Underground Railroad. This initiative is part of our own journey towards reckoning with history and racial justice and our recognition of the people and places here in New Jersey that played a role for freedom seekers. Today's Underground Railroad story weaves together a history, a place, a doctor, and brothers in the quest for freedom and dignity. Let's start with a place. Colemantown's place in African American history dates back to the 1800s. A small, rural community of African American residents, it was named for William Coleman, who served as a conductor on the Underground Railroad. Its historic sites include Jacob's Chapel, the Colemantown Meeting House, and the Colemantown Cemetery. This trio of properties date back to the 1800s and are a testament to the contribution of African Americans residing there. The meeting house served as a safe harbor for men and women of color to worship and learn. It is one of the few black schoolhouses still standing in the state. The church stands nearby, as does the cemetery. This is the burial ground of African American Civil War soldiers and of Dr. James Still, known as the Black Doctor of the Pines. This is the place where free black people assisted the runaway enslaved at great personal risk, and where our story continues. A doctor, one of 18 children of former enslaved parents, he rose from a rustic poor childhood in the Pine Barrens to become one of the largest landowners and wealthiest men in Burlington County. Growing up, his family hid a terrible secret. Before James's birth, his father had purchased his own freedom, but his mother had escaped from bondage and, if caught, could be returned to her owner. Furthermore, all her children would automatically be considered the property of the slave owner. It's small wonder that the family lived remotely deep in the Pine Barrens. But a childhood incident made a deep impression on James. A doctor came through the area to inoculate the children, and from that moment on, James wanted to become a doctor. But how? Without money, education, or white skin, his childhood dream seemed unattainable. Desperately poor, James' father sent him away to be an indentured servant for 3 years with the proviso that in each year of his servitude he would be allowed to go to school for 1 month. Altogether, James received 3 months of formal education. He had previously taught himself to read, and during his servitude and the years following, James read all he could on botany and physiology. These readings, coupled with his knowledge of plants and herbs acquired from his youth and contacts with Native American healers, reinvigorated his thirst to be a healer himself. Starting with a small still, James began concocting herbal remedies for neighbors and friends. as his success and popularity grew, the demand for his remedies increased. Derided by medical doctors in the area, a plot was afoot to discredit James since he had no formal training or medical degree. Undeterred, James sought legal advice and was told that indeed he could not charge for his services or hold himself out as an MD without a degree, but he could charge for his remedies, which was beginning to make a fine living free of debt. His renown grew, and he opened an office in Medford, New Jersey, near Colemantown. He wrote a memoir called Early Recollections and Life of Dr. James Still, 1812 to 1885. His oldest son, James Thomas Still, was the first black graduate of the Harvard Medical School, graduating with honors. Brothers. We know more about the remarkable Still family. James' brother, William Still, resided over the border in Philadelphia. Born a free man in New Jersey and the youngest of the Still children, William became a member of the Pennsylvania Anti-Slavery Society and director of the General Vigilance Committee of Philadelphia, where he managed the committee's finances and established a network of safe houses and contacts from the Upper South all the way to Canada, including working with Harriet Tubman. His savviness, intelligence, and courage in assisting over 800 freedom seekers was so widely known that in his 1902 New York Times obituary, he is referred to as the father of the Underground Railroad. One of his great contributions was the authorship of his book, William Still's Underground Railroad, which narrated interviews he conducted with enslaved people as they made their way north. Writing down their stories was an act of great daring-do, as it could lead to personal retribution from the authorities, and if found, would reveal the names and dates of runaways. William kept these records well hidden. His motive for writing the stories was to assist in family reunification, as many families had been separated either by the practice of slavery or independent dashes for freedom. Ironically, in one interview, William shockingly discovered that the person seeking assistance was none other than his own brother, Peter, who had been separated from the family in childhood and had been enslaved for over 40 years. Peter was now free and desperate to liberate his wife and family in Alabama. But when several attempts failed, he became famous by traveling the country, raising money at speaking events, and eventually was able to buy his family's freedom for $5,000. Now we circle back to place. The town of Colemantown, now called Mount Laurel, was ready to make history again. At historic Jacob's Chapel in the fall of 1970, then Mayor Bill Haynes told a crowd of 60 African Americans that Mount Laurel was denying their requests for affordable housing. "If you people can't afford to live in our town, then you'll just have to leave," the mayor told the stunned crowd. Galvanized, the residents filed a lawsuit. 5 years later, in 1975, New Jersey Supreme Court declared the township's exclusionary zoning practices were unconstitutional, and that every municipality has a responsibility to create fair housing policies for low and middle-income residents. The Mount Laurel decision was the first case of its type in the nation and is widely regarded as one of the most significant civil rights cases in the United States since Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. The Mount Laurel Doctrine today is a cornerstone of land use courses in all of our nation's law schools. Please visit our USR website to learn more about these historic sites and influential people. And now Kristen will show us where Colemantown Mount Laurel is on our map.
Hello. I am showing you my phone today because I'll tell you afterwards. Here is New Jersey, just thank goodness for technology. I'm going to zero in down here, and I have our marker. Colemantown is here. There you go, in southern New Jersey. And if anyone knows where the map of New Jersey is, please let me know.